Hi there, and happy February to you, and welcome to our PS Flavor Club cooking class. We're excited.
We are excited. This is Pam Smith. I'm Nicole Talbot, and we are going to be cooking an amazing meal together tonight. Before we even get started,
we need to do a little cheers.
Always,
because
yes.
We're drinking a little rosé. Not sure what you are, but the PAM'S pick for this particular meal, the PAM'S pairing, is a suggestion of beautiful rosé from the south of France, which is kind of perfect for this dish, or Pinot Gris. But the truth is, whatever wine you have in your glass or sparkling water, your choice, will be absolutely fabulous. So carry on.
All right. Good. I'm glad we jumped straight to that. We're so happy to have you. We've been doing these cooking classes. We do them monthly on Facebook Live so that you can join us, ask questions, hopefully cook along with us. And if you are cooking along with us, you already hopefully have your recipe printed out just in case technology doesn't go the way we want. So if technology falls on our part, we'll be right back. If technology frustrates you on your part, grab your recipe and keep going until your internet comes back. If you haven't printed your recipe yet, you can go to the Files tab in this group, the PS Flavor Club group, and you'll print out a PDF that looks like this. It has your recipe, it has the PAM'S pairing, grocery list, and prep sheet so that you can be ready to go. If you're just watching as a demo tonight and wishing and hoping that you were at the Epcot Food and Wine Festival,
yes,
we hope that
in August.
we hope that this will transport you there and give you just a taste of it. Maybe even a little adventure out in February when it may be a little cold where you are. I will admit it's not so cold where we are, but if you need a little Caribbean adventure, we hope that tonight is that for you. We love having you here with us. Tonight we're making a Caribbean shrimp penne, and I will say it is one of our favorite dishes. This is my mom, and she has been making this dish for us in variations for quite a while, and it is one that we have asked for over and over, so we're excited to share this with you. We feel like you who do this club with us are part of our family. So welcome to that, and I think we should get going.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we, of course, decide what we're going to be cooking for each individual month a few months back. And when we thought about this dish, we thought about the fact that many were in cold. It snowed yesterday in Chicago. We happen to know it's kind of cold in certain areas of the world. And we felt like a little adventure to the Caribbean could at least put that image in your brain, and the flavors that are in this dish really do transport you. Beautiful vegetables, peppers and onions, of course, some sun-dried tomatoes, thinking of you being a little sun-drenched in and of itself. The Caribbean kitchen is one of our kitchen blends that is almost a bronzing seasoning. Many of you are familiar with a blackening seasoning, but Caribbean is bronzing, meaning it's much more full flavor, it's much more balanced in flavor, not just that bam of heat, but yet it just forms this beautiful crusting on the shrimp, which is arguably one of the stars of the dish. The other star is the beautiful penne pasta. The other star is the beautiful vegetables, asparagus, and as I mentioned, the tomatoes, the peppers. We're also going to be using a little goat cheese and brandy. Because that's going to give, again, another layer of flavor. It's a one-pot meal. So Nicole mentioned if you printed out your recipe, hopefully you also printed out the prep list, because that gives you an opportunity to get a little in advance of it. If you didn't, no problem. As you can tell, we talk a lot. So you'll have ample time to be able to dice that onion, slice that garlic, and catch right up as we go. If you ever need to just slow it down, you can do that, and we'll jump right back in.
Absolutely.
One thing that I would love to see you do now, if you haven't already, is get your pasta water boiling. Many of you have already gotten ahead of the game and you've got your pasta cooked. But if you haven't, get that pasta water boiling, because it's a big pot. We wanted it a rolling boil of salted water. So get that going now so that when your time is coming to put the pasta in, it's already ready.
Great. Okay, so you'll get your pasta water going. But I wanted to highlight one other star of this meal.
Yes.
And that is the Cutco 7-inch Santoku.
Hello.
You're going to see Pam using this knife tonight, teaching just a few knife tricks, hacks, skills that you can do while you're in your kitchen. But we hate to just tease you with great knives. We want to give you the opportunity to have one in your kitchen. So Cutco has given us the opportunity to give one away to somebody who's making this meal. You have until February 28th to make the meal, post a photo of it, and if you include your Caribbean Kitchen jar or bag in the picture, you'll get a second entry. All the rules are on the Facebook page, and good luck to you. We hope that those who didn't get the knife last month, who were a little bit, I'm not even going to say sad, they were mad.
They were in it to win it.
They were, and,
Yes.
and they were not happy.
Yes.
But we felt like the 7-inch Santoku will
my
be
gosh.
an amazing
Yes.
opportunity and knife. So more about that on the Facebook page. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We have Spice Girl Jenna, who is moderating, and she'll grab your questions, ask Pam, and we'll get an answer live.
Fantastic.
I'm going to grab the camera.
This is called the Nicole cam, where Nicole gets around. You'll still hear her voice. You might hear Jenna's voice, but she'll be able to get much up close and personal with what's going on in this one pot meal.
All right, let's do this.
Let's
I'm
do
gonna
it.
bring my wine with
Yes,
me.
cheers again. I do love that wine. It's interesting. I mentioned that we thought about this dish many a month ago. What we didn't know those months ago is that I would just be coming home from a trip, working, believe it or not, to Italy. And so as I was in Sicily, I was thinking about this dish that I'd be coming back to make and thinking how perfect it is, because again, Sicily in and of itself is so sun-drenched. And so to be kind of whisk away was exactly the case. And we're using beautiful olive oils, we're using peppers and tomatoes, all of those things that Sicily and so many of the Mediterranean region really does specialize in. So again, water should be boiling for the pasta. We're going to get started with the shrimp. We suggest that you get a larger shrimp, either peeled and deveined, or you do that yourself by just slipping a knife up towards the back of the shrimp, slipping that little black stripe out, and then quickly and easily taking the peeling off. We also take the tails off, because again, we're not wanting tails in this pasta dish that you're going to be eating. Otherwise, you'll have to kind of get into that, and it's just a messy affair. The shrimp has been bought. This particular shrimp is a wild caught shrimp, which I'm very fond of and quite love. We have some beautiful shrimp around the Florida waters. So even those of you that live in Michigan and Ohio, you can always look for Key West shrimp. You can look for Canaveral shrimp. Wild caught shrimp from Florida, absolutely a fan. I have drained the shrimp well because I really want it nice and dry, so that when the Caribbean Kitchen goes onto it, it's going to then get into the pan, form a really beautiful crusting. It's a searing action that's going to happen with this shrimp, and we're going to do that first so that we can really get the heat that's in place. The recipe calls for 1.5 teaspoons of the Caribbean Kitchen. This is a 1/2 tablespoon, so that's exactly what it is giving me. I'm just going to do a quick toss of that. I want to try to cover that shrimp and season that shrimp with, again, this bronzing seasoning. If you feel like you need a little more of a touch, feel free to do that. It's all about the flavor. As you know, with PS Flavor, that's kind of one of our taglines. Don't forget the flavor. And in looking at this, because I've got a healthy amount, I actually am going to add just a little bit more, about another 1/2 teaspoon. And then I'm going to get that into my pan. I'm heating the pan on a nice high heat. Going to add a little touch of olive oil to that. And then I'll go right into it with our shrimp. And you should hear a nice little sizzle. I'm not sure if the Nicole cam is picking that up, but that sizzle is important because it tells me that the pan is hot enough that I'm really going to get that kind of bronzing and searing action that's on it. We used to think that searing held the juices in, but we now know that that's not necessarily the case. What happens with searing is you just get, again, that beautiful crusting, that crusting we love on scallops, that crusting we'll love on this particular shrimp. And again, the Caribbean Kitchen on it just helps with that effort in lots of ways. This is gonna cook relatively quickly. We're gonna cook it just for about 3 to 4 minutes. I'm gonna let it cook on one side, and then I will turn it. After it's cooked, I'm gonna remove it from the pan, because then I'm gonna use the same pan. Remember, it's a one-pot pasta, to be able to give me all of that flavor of the bronzing shrimp going right into the pasta dish itself. Not touching it, you might notice that, and that's because I'm wanting that sear to happen. The tendency, whether we're cooking hamburgers on the grill, or we want to just keep flipping them, or we have fish, we want to keep checking it. We don't want to do that. We want to just let it rest, because otherwise we end up steaming the dish rather than getting that beautiful kind of sear. And Nicole, if you want to come a little bit closer into this without getting too much steam, you'll see that you can already see the shrimp starting to turn that pinkish color. That pinkish color is the sign that indeed the heat has hit and you're getting that beautiful searing that we're wanting to see. Once you see that, you can start to flip, and you see that you're seeing that beautiful bronzing starting to happen on the shrimp. I'm going to go ahead and let it cook on the other side. Same action applies. And while that's doing it, I'm going to slip over and start looking at some of the vegetables that are going to go into this. We're going to be adding an onion, and throughout all of our classes, I've talked about the trick to being able to dice an onion and dice it very easily and quickly. So take a look at some of those if you're joining this for the first time. I like a red onion in this because I like the color. I like the little bite that the red onion gives. We're also going to be using a pepper. You can either use a red pepper or an orange pepper. We happen to find these peppers at the store and absolutely love them. And you've not just diced a pepper before. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I'm telling you, this is my favorite. You just cut the ends off, and rather than trying to take the seeds out of the middle, instead use your beautiful knife to just literally slice the pepper away from those seeds. And with that, you have just some nice planks that are then going to be able to be easily cut into some dices. You can put those planks together, and literally first you slice, and then you come around, turn them sideways, and then you dice. Slice and then dice. I'm going to leave these a nicer size because I really want to see those peppers in this dish. So again, very easily you cut that pepper away with your beautiful knife. Notice it's a sharp one, so it's literally just sliding through. After you slice it, you turn it and you dice it. Slice, then dice. Making those little planks first makes it so very easy. Fingers always straight so that there's nothing for that beautiful knife to cut except for the pepper. So while that's happening, the shrimp has finished bronzing. Oh my goodness, look at that.
Beautiful.
Isn't it? But I almost had to force myself away. That's why I went over to cut the pepper, because again, the tendency is just to want to keep stirring it. Shrimp cooks very quickly. So again, we're not wanting to do that. We just want a little bit of that crusting. Then we're going to get it out of the pan. You'll notice that nice little fond that's at the bottom. That's where that crusting has kind of started to leave its caramelization. You've not burned anything. What you're doing is flavoring the pan. That pan that is then going to pick up all of that fond when I add the onion and add the peppers and some of the rest right into it. Let me go for a little larger scoop. I think you're ready for me to pop one of these right into your mouth, aren't you, Nicole?
They look delicious.
They really.
I love having them deveined and tails off before you even start. Mm-hmm. It seems like they're just ready to go.
They really are. Little touch more olive oil, and then in we go with the peppers, the onions, and in we go with those peppers. And begin the process of sauteing those. Just a nice gentle saute right into the same pan. Gonna take the heat down just a little bit to about a medium-high heat. And while that's cooking, I'm gonna come over and work on my garlic. Now, You have a couple of options with garlic. Generally, in almost any dish, you would mince the garlic before it goes in. But in this particular one, I really like it sliced, and I like some nice thick slices because I like the taste of it. So all that I've done is just remove the skin. You don't need any special equipment to do that. All you do is just cut the ends off of it, give it a gentle pop, and the skins just slip off. And even with this big knife, all I'm gonna do with my fingers nice and straight is just taste some nice thick slices of that garlic.
We have a question.
Yes.
We have some people who are not big fans of onions.
Mm-hmm.
If that was you, would you just skip the onion entirely, or would you substitute something?
Well, first, I would see if that person that's not an onion fan is a shallot fan. Because shallots are a very mild form of an onion. You don't cry when you cut the shallot. It doesn't release those same kinds of notes in. So it's a really awesome substitution. Sweeter onions, Vidalia onions, Maui onions, Walla Walla onions are oftentimes a good choice too, but shallots are usually my go-to for someone that's not fond of onions. And interestingly, if someone's not fond of garlic, I suggest the same thing. Try shallots because it really does give a beautiful flavor. We use a lot of granulated garlic in our different spice blends. Caribbean Kitchen actually has some of it. So if you're fond of the garlic flavor but not the aftermath of the garlic, having it in that granulated form will sometimes give you the flavor, but again, not any of the added aromas that can follow. So there we go. I'm adding the garlic in last. Now I'm not as concerned about it sliced as I would be if it was minced. In a minced form, it tends to cook rather quickly, and in that minced form can actually burn. So I tend to add that garlic in about the last 30 seconds or so of cooking. And all I'm wanting to do is really let the heat just work to release the flavor that's in that sliced garlic. And those were pretty nice sized cloves, so you can tell in this house we tend to like garlic a lot. Now while that is doing its magic, just for those few minutes, let's talk about the other kinds of ingredients that are going to be coming into this. We've already have put these peppers, we put the onions, we put that garlic in to let it do its magic. Now I'm going to add some sun-dried tomatoes. The sun-dried tomatoes, if they're packed in oil, you want to drain them from that oil because all you're looking for is just the flavor, not looking for any added oil or fat from that. We're using that from the olive oil itself that we're cooking this in.
And I had someone ask me earlier, while looking for the sun-dried tomatoes, where in the grocery store they should find those.
You usually find them in the Italian section, in that ethnic aisle where you would find some pastas, and you would find potentially pine nuts or anchovy paste or pesto sauce. Any of those beautiful ingredients is where you're apt to find the sun-dried tomatoes. If you don't find them, you can find them dried in a pouch very similar to raisins, or again, you can find them in a jar packed in oil.
But for this dish, you prefer them packed in oil?
I do. I think they just keep a little bit more of their flavor as compared to that full-on dried. They stay a little more plump and just keep that flavor together.
Great.
The last vegetable I'm going to add is asparagus, and as you saw in your recipe, I suggest that you blanch it. Now, traditional blanching is dipping a vegetable like asparagus or green beans into boiling water for just about 30 seconds, removing it from the boiling water and putting it into an ice bath. What it does is it seals in the chlorophyll, which gives it that beautiful green color as compared to turning an olive green. You can do that if the vegetables are quite thin, like this pencil-thin asparagus. You can also take a shortcut, and we talk about that in the recipe, where you put those asparagus, wash them, and put them onto a plate in your microwave. Microwave it for just about 2 minutes, 1.5 to 2 minutes, and it will seal in that chlorophyll in exactly the same way, but in a much easier kind of step. So both traditional or save yourself a little bit of time. Once you have them blanched, we want to cut them on a bias cut, and that's just because it just is a prettier kind of look. I'm going to take about half of these to do my first cut, and all we do is kind of layer them right up together, and then again, cutting at slightly an angle, you get your bias cut of the asparagus.
So you're looking for about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in length.
Absolutely. My gosh, I love this knife. Look at that.
It is amazing.
It is amazing. Once those are cut, another quick stir to these vegetables that are cooking. And now let's add the asparagus to that as well.
And all of those vibrant colors. It's just beautiful with
I
the.
know.
Is that why you chose the pepper that you did?
It is.
Yeah.
Because we were already using the sun-dried tomato and the red onion. I just felt that having an orange or yellow pepper would just provide even a little bit more of an interest. I decided it's going to stay nice and big. Okay, so we're all good. We've got it all going. We're just going to do a very quick and light saute of that because I'm not wanting it to cook too long. The blanching really started that cooking process, and then the heat will continue it. I'm just kind of working with the flavors right now. So next up, we're going to add what could be considered a secret ingredient, and that's brandy. And I wanted to show you these cute little bottles. If you like to cook with alcohols in some way, but don't necessarily think of where else you might use brandy, rather than buying a fifth, instead go for those little bottles. They're not just for airplanes. They're great to use to have on hand. Coconut rum, brandy, anything like that that you want to cook with, a little liqueur, great to use the little bottles. I'm using the brandy to deglaze the pan. Remember that fond, what looked to be kind of the burnt pieces at the bottom? Using the brandy to be able to do two things. It's literally going to cook that fond right away from the bottom of the pan, release it, and release all of its flavors. I'm letting it cook pretty hard right now because Nicole is getting intoxicated with the fact that that brandy's alcohol is cooking off. What you're doing instead is you're concentrating the flavor of the brandy. Now, if you don't have brandy and think you might like to use wine, a white wine would work beautifully in this. Whatever you happen to be drinking could work out just fine. If you would like to switch it up and use a vodka or use a tequila, you can certainly do that too. I just really love the balanced flavor of the brandy with this. There's something magical about the way it works with the goat cheese and the way it works with the pine nuts. Jenna, question.
Yes, we have someone wondering, do you have to deglaze your pan with an alcohol, or can you use another form of
That's
liquid?
a great question. Actually, any liquid will do, particularly a liquid though that has a little bit of acidity. So red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, water will deglaze a pan. It's any kind of liquid hitting that hot pan is what releases it. The acidity though tends to help. Sometimes if I'm using tomatoes like I'm doing now, just the liquid that's in the tomatoes is enough to be that deglazer. So if you wanted to skip the brandy, skip the alcohol, this would be the time that you could instead use these tomatoes and that little bit of juice that's in them to do the same thing. These are a diced tomato. I like to use a petite diced tomato because I like just the texture of them. They tend to be a little bit sweeter. And again, you're not getting a big tomato in every bite, but instead just that little petite dice. And notice in this, I've put the tomatoes in without the juice. I've reserved the juice. I'll add it back in just a little bit. But right now, I'm really looking for those tomatoes, the brandy, all of the vegetables that are there to start to reduce a bit. It's just allowing that reduction of flavor. And reduction is concentration of flavor. the more you can be gentle with a dish and let those flavors work. These are layers upon layers upon layers of flavor. So the timing of when you add things is really one of those hacks you were talking about, Nicole, that can make the essential difference between the flavor you're looking for in a dish that's just okay. Again, don't forget the flavor.
Okay, so when you have your can of petite diced tomatoes, you're actually going to separate it out.
Right,
and
exactly.
so you've reserved your tomato juice from the can.
Right?
But then you've used your petite diced tomatoes as one of your layers.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so with that, now comes the time to add a little bit of chicken stock. What I'm really doing is making a sauce for the pasta and that reserved juice. And now, voila, we really do have a sauce in motion, right?
Looks delicious.
So delicious. So colorful too. We're gonna let that kind of come back to a little bit of a simmer, and then it's gonna be time to start thinking about the pasta. Now again, while we've been cooking, my hope is that you've gotten your pasta cooking. We're gonna let that simmer for just a few minutes, and let's talk about the pasta. We went ahead and cooked the pasta right before class because we wanted to have it cooked and ready to go. But what I didn't do is drain it in the traditional way you might have learned to drain it over the sink, where you get rid of all the pasta water. Instead, we reserve that pasta water, and that's important because the pasta water has a lot of the nice sauce thickening capability. It helps to thicken the sauce. So if I end up maybe going a little too far with this once I add the pasta to it, I can reserve that cooking stock and just add a little bit to it, and it actually becomes a thickening agent for the sauce itself. So don't get rid of the water yet. Hold on to it. I always suggest, we said this right at the get-go, to be cooking your pasta in a rolling boil. Big pot, lots of water, and salted enough that it tastes like the ocean. That's the key for it. It's not just that little touch of salt. It's tasting it so it tastes like the ocean, because that's when it really uptakes into the pasta itself. Always kosher salt. We tend to use a Diamond Crystal kosher salt that has a little bit of less sodium because of the crystal size per teaspoon. So with that, you can feel good about using it. A sea salt works out really nicely too.
And do you salt your water before putting in the pasta?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
I let the water come to almost a boil first, and then I add the salt right at the end. Again, salted water doesn't boil quite as quickly as traditional or plain water, and then I add the salt, let it come to that rolling boil, and then I add the pasta. We're using a whole wheat penne pasta. Fine to use a white pasta if that's what you would choose to do. I love whole wheat penne for a couple of reasons. I love the shape of it. It has little ridges that are almost bronzed cut, and in that it literally enables the sauce to get trapped. Not just inside of the pasta, but those little ridges tend to hold the sauce together just a little bit more. It becomes a much more cohesive dish as compared to pasta with sauce. And also notice that I'm not going to be having pasta on a plate that I top with sauce. I'm literally going to toss the pasta right into it. Jen, question.
Yes. If you do not have penne in your pantry, is there another shape you would recommend that would be a good substitute?
Bow tie pasta is one that kids love, and it's another one that would work out great. You could certainly use, I probably wouldn't use a spaghetti with this one, or an angel hair, something that's a little bit longer, because again, you're not going to get that adhering. Rigatoni would be another one. Even the longer noodle pasta, but a little bit thicker. I just want a little bit more action there, and again, preferably one that's hollow as well, because it just allows that sauce to really cook in and all come together. So we've got the pasta cooked, We've had it staying nice and hot over this pot of water. This has been able to cook enough that we're starting to get a little bit of reduction of that sauce. I'm starting to concentrate it just a little bit, which is what I'm really, really looking to do. And now is the perfect time, not just to add the pasta to it, but to also add the shrimp and some of the other herbs to it. So first, I'm going to put the pasta in. And you can see how quickly this has all come together. Looks amazing. A little bit of pasta, do a nice little toss. Allow that pasta to just start absorbing some of that sauce.
And we have a question.
Yes.
How do you know how long to cook the penne since you can't throw it against the wall like you would spaghetti?
I love whoever asked that question.
Me too.
So that becomes a follow the instructions on the package. Whatever the package says, if it says to cook it for 9 to 11 minutes, because we're going to be doing a little further cooking with this dish, adding it to the sauce, stick to the 9 minutes. If it just says a flat 10, cook it for 8 minutes. You want to take it out about 2 minutes before because we're wanting it to be a little bit al dente. You've heard that before, which is just a little firm to the bite. You're not looking for a mushy pasta at all, but instead looking for something that has just that little bite that's still with it, the same way we would cook a risotto. Yes, Jenna?
Yes, Danielle was wondering if she missed when you added the tomato juice in. If you could revisit that.
I absolutely can. You add the tomato juice that we reserved at the same time you added the chicken stock. So we let the tomatoes and all of that sauce kind of cook together first. After to cook down just a little bit and mix those flavors together, then you add the chicken stock and then the reserved tomato juice. Great question.
Look at how this is looking. Oh my gosh. The Nicole cam went away from it for just too long and now it is amazing.
Isn't it? So absolutely love this dish. This is bringing back some memories, isn't it, Nicole?
Absolutely.
Now, I also have some pine nuts that we're going to be adding to this. So while that's kind of coming together, let me talk a little bit about what I did with the pine nuts. I call for toasted pine nuts. When you buy pine nuts, they come untoasted. What you want to do is get them into a pan, a hot pan, no oil to it, just a hot, dry pan, and toast them, just letting them take on that nice browned color. You'll know that they're done about the time that you start to smell the beautiful aromas of the pine nuts. Don't go walk away and pick up your phone and play words with friends. Instead, keep your eye on this because it can go from slightly golden, touch of brown, to black in a very quick time. Once it's been done, just remove it from the heat. Keep tossing it because what you're wanting to do is just get that release of those beautiful essential oils. To this, we're going to be adding about half of the pine nuts. I'm going to reserve the remaining half to be able to use as a little bit of a garnish for our dishes. Also at this time, I'm going to add in some of our goat cheese, and I'm pretty sure that this is the ingredient that makes the magic because all of a sudden we've gone from a really beautiful sauce that's cooking away to now something that's going to become a creamier sauce. You would think, as a matter of fact, that we've used heavy cream in this, but oh no, just a little bit of goat cheese, just about 4 ounces. We're going to stir that and just allow it to start to melt in. I'm going to take it off heat at this moment because there's enough heat that's within the pasta itself that it's going to be able to melt that goat cheese, but I'm not looking to burn it.
Okay, so you've turned the heat off, and we're just cooking with the residual heat.
The residual heat that's in the pasta itself. But isn't that just a beautiful creaminess?
It is, and it's so amazing that you can get that from the goat cheese without having to use a heavy cream.
Yeah, if you think about what's in here, it's chicken stock, it is the tomato juice, it's that brandy, but there's really not anything but the olive oil as your cooking agent, and now just that little creaminess that comes with the goat cheese. As I mentioned, I'm going to add about half of the pine nuts to this and some shredded basil. I'm going to use some fresh basil leaves as my garnish, but for this I want to get it in, and notice I'm adding it right at the end as well. The time that you want to use fresh herbs is right at the end of cooking. If they were dried herbs, like an Italian dried herb seasoning, you might put that in at the beginning because they're sturdier and they'll last a little bit longer up to the heat. But fresh herbs, you want to add right at the end of the cooking process. And we are at the end. It's just about as perfect as it can be, except for one thing. We haven't yet tasted it. So that needs to happen next.
Always.
Always.
This is one of my favorite parts. Every time I watch my mom cook a meal is to watch her taste it and just be so excited about what has been made.
Well, what I haven't done yet is I haven't added any extra Caribbean seasoning. I used it on the shrimp, and remember I added even a little bit more of a touch. Now's the time to tell me, do I need to add a little bit more of it? So we'll see. Nope. You're right. It is so good. Best I've ever made. Absolutely delicious. But
Great.
Again, this is a time that you can adjust your seasoning. You want to put a little sprinkle of the Caribbean. Maybe what I would do instead is
I love that, a sprinkle of the Caribbean.
Yes, that's such a nice thought, a splash of the Caribbean. What I might do instead of adding more right now is I might wait till I get it into the plate and then do just a little sprinkle of it right on top.
And like Pam was saying at the very beginning, the Caribbean kitchen really is it's a bronzing seasoning. Think of what you would use for blackening, or to blacken, but without that high heat that can sometimes make it difficult to enjoy for your palate. This is more mild, still with some heat, but more mild blackening blend, so we call it a bronzer, and that's what she put on the shrimp.
And with this, I've got it into the plate. I'm going to sprinkle a few more of those pine nuts right on top of it. And put it down for you, Nicole, because I'm also going to show another little trick. I call in the recipe for some additional goat cheese to use as a garnish. But goat cheese is kind of hard to crumble. You can buy it crumbled, but it's a little hard to buy. So what I do is I use half of that log, the 4 ounces, I got an 8-ounce log, and I froze the other 4 ounces. Then with one of your beautiful graters, you literally just go right over the top of it. And what you're doing is having this really fine crumble of the cheese.
How long would it need to be frozen?
We had this in for about 2 hours.
Okay.
It freezes very, very quickly, and isn't that beautiful?
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
And it just gives a really, otherwise you end up with these, different kinds of crumbles that are a little bit more difficult to get that fineness to. Yes, Jetta?
Once you freeze that goat cheese one time, can you put it back in the freezer, or do you need to keep it out?
Because I just pulled it out just as we started, so it's still block hard. So what I'll do is just wrap it up and put it right back in. If I let it come to a complete thaw, I wouldn't do that. Now I'm adding just that little touch of some fresh basil. I'm going to add just one little sprinkle of the Caribbean. I do love that as well. Right across the top of it.
Beautiful.
And there we have it. Our dish with a difference.
A journey to the Caribbean. That is amazing.
So
I'm
good.
excited to eat it. I have a feeling that others that are watching, one person it looks like is watching but not cooking, and they said that you are making them a little bit hungry.
I can only imagine that is the case.
But we
It's
also know
fantastic.
that some of you are cooking along. We hope that you have your dish looking very similar. Remember to post your picture, and remember to have your jar or bag in your picture so that you can be entered for the Cutco Cutlery giveaway, and hopefully get that amazing 7-inch Santoku knife.
It really was amazing. I love this knife. I
It's a
know.
drink.
It's so much of a drink. That is really beautiful.
I know.
I'm
I'm excited
about
to
it.
eat it.
I
You should
know.
be proud.
It's really awesome.
I love cooking with her because she's so proud of what she makes because it's just delicious, but it's also nutritious.
Yes.
So we haven't used anything that you go away feeling, oh, it's so indulgent, and yet it tastes indulgent.
Right. Yeah, it tastes creamy. It tastes much higher in salt than what it actually is. It's just full flavor.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're wanting. That's what our spice blends are all about. It's not about salting food. It's about flavoring food. And this dish is a perfect example.
Yes, so Caribbean Shrimp Penne. We just finished. If you haven't made it, we hope you'll grab your recipe, grocery list, prep sheet, and wine pairing from the Files tab in the Facebook group at facebook.com/group/PS Flavor Club. And we have yet more coming up in a month,
Yes.
not quite a month,
No.
just about 3 weeks on March the 12th. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. As you've noticed this winter, we hope you've noticed, we wanted to do some of these more one-pot wonders, but something that Pam wanted to do was take us out of the pot, and we're going to do a sheet pan meal featuring citrus spice using either chicken or fish, whatever you prefer, or if you want to go vegetarian with it, there's a great option there. So we'll be posting that recipe, but that will be on March the 12th for a citrus spice sheet pan meal.
And as a sheet pan meal is, and what's made it famous, is it's all cooked on the sheet pan. So this dish is going to be a little bit like a roasted vegetable niçoise, if you're familiar with a salad niçoise. It gives you all of those flavors, green beans and potatoes and tomatoes, together with a citrus spice fish or chicken. Really going to be awesome.
Amazing.
I
Well,
know.
I left my wine as I often do, but
Yes.
I can't do that because we need to cheers.
We do indeed.
Jenna, thank you so much for moderating all the
Always,
questions.
Spice Girl Jenna.
And if anybody else has any questions, don't hesitate to ask. You can send them in and we'll get answers to you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this meal and all there are to come. Bon appetit.